Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have great guests and information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And today we're going to talk about working with couples. And what do we do if there's some discord there, or how can you, as an advisor, step in and really add value for them? We have a very special guest, and I'll give you the official bio in just a minute. Um, Theresa Beran Kulat is a friend that I met at a workshop I was giving, and have come to know her and her amazing work that she does on the legal side, on the holistic side, working with clients. And I'm so grateful that she agreed to come on the show today. So it's going to be a really good one. So let me give you Terry's official background. Theresa Beran Kulat stands for healthy relationships. Is a pioneer in collaborative law, and we're going to talk about what that means in the collaborative law movement. She's been helping families through the divorce process for more than 20 years. She's active in the Illinois State Bar Association, the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, and Collaborative Divorce Illinois, holding many leadership positions, including being president in 2016 and 2017. So seeing how to create a new future, helping people divorce well, she began mediating with couples who didn't want their marriage to end, but also wanted to create a new marriage. And now this offering, called Intentional Relationship Design, has been expanded and is now available to couples who may not yet be married, but want a conscious way of creating their relationship. Like, how smart and cool is that? Like, going into a relationship ready to make it successful. In addition to Terry's traditional background, she's got her JD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She's also trained in the Tantra Nova Institute quantum healing training and the Rowley method, and has been an astrologer since the 1980s. And I love that Terry brings in a more integrated way of working with her clients. And I think that was part of the reason that we connected with each other. So Terry, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Ellen. I just so enjoy whenever I get to be with you and learn from you and just commit. So thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, I'm so glad. So before I get into some of the questions that I have in terms of how advisors can work more effectively with their couples that they work with, will you help unpack a bit about what collaborative divorce is versus mediation versus the traditional process? I think that will be helpful.
Sure. So what we see on TV, LA Law, Boston Legal, whatever, that is adversarial law. And it is unfortunate that it's kind of the beginning, the baseline, that people hire lawyers who then advocate for them. And traditional divorce litigation doesn't really help a family as a whole. And it can tear people apart, actually. So at a certain point, mediation started becoming more in the forefront. And that's when a couple works with a neutral third party to help them negotiate their own agreement. Over time, there really became kind of a divergence. And in the late 90s, a man by the name of Stu Webb came up with this brilliant brainchild, and that is, why not hire lawyers right up front to help settle the case so that the couple can reach their own settlement and then move on. And so it's a process. It's not a particular area of law. It's a process where each person, each husband, wife, partner one, partner two, hires a collaborative attorney, and all four of those people agree up front that they're going to settle. And so all of the actions taken in a collaborative divorce are designed to bring the couple together, to preserve the family. It then became even more interesting in that we sometimes have a team. So we might have a neutral financial advisor on the collaborative team who serves sort of like a mediator. All these people are trained mediators. Okay, so they're trained to help people reach resolution. And we might have a therapist who is working with the family if there's been communication breakdowns, or a child specialist to help with the children. So it's a very future focused process. And that's somewhat how it connects, I believe, with what you folks do, which is you want to help your clients create fabulous futures that they're going to live into. And it may sound strange, but in some cases, a divorce actually helps the couple become more clear in their communication, and they can actually design what they want their lives to look like after the fact, instead of litigation where essentially each person is kind of turning their life over to somebody else and they're working it out, and then it lands back in their lap and they really don't understand what they've got to do from now on. And so that's kind of the main focus of the difference between a collaborative process and traditional litigation.
I'm remembering back, and I haven't thought about this for a while, a couple that I worked with when I was a financial advisor. They had some assets, but it wasn't millions and millions of dollars. And when I first met them, I had a sense they weren't going to last. They were fighting over budgets and stuff. And that tended to be an area that when there were spending differences. And then they came back when they were in the middle of the divorce. And I think I had met with the husband, the wife, just the husband at that point, and they were fighting over the kids, and they had run up $100,000 of legal bills. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like they had $20 million, where maybe that wasn't a big amount of money for them. It was a big amount of money, and it seemed such a waste. Besides, I imagine emotionally how horrible it was for them. I also remember, and I know there's people listening that are certified divorce financial advisors. This is the world they really live in. But I remember when I got a client post-mediation versus post-acrimonious divorce, they were just ready to, go through the process. They left the divorce process much less, I don't know if traumatized is the right word, but it could be.
Oh, it totally is. The divorce, the legal system can be traumatizing. And, I hear people, I had a woman come to me, she and her husband had been in litigation for 2 years. And most of their wealth was in real estate. And in litigation, her attorney took the position that all 8 properties should be sold. And his attorney on his behalf said, no, all 8 we need to keep. So they've been fighting for 2 years about this. And she hired me. It's like, okay, let's be realistic. Let's just pick a few, sell 1 or 2, and give her some liquidity. I mean, that actually is an important distinction. And you pointed out, through a collaborative process or a mediation process, it's really about empowering the people to understand their finances and understand what their situation is going to be. And so you pointed that out. That woman came to you ready to do what she needed to do because she wasn't left in the dust with the way it can work in some situations.
Yeah, with more assets too. So I know you're a proponent of how advisors are focused all the time on risk mitigation, like with insurance and even creating a financial plan. And obviously, marriages and divorces have financial implications besides like the life and emotional implications. So can you explain how a good prenup or post-nup might work to help lower the risk in this, and how advisors, if they're a little bit more knowledgeable about this, might be able to support their clients a little bit better to get to come up with solutions that may be helpful?
Thank you. Yes, this is what my current passion is, because I feel like when somebody finds their person, let's help them stay together and create a situation where they're communicating and they're on the same page. So first I'll share, as a divorce lawyer, when people show up with prenups, okay, so they have done a prenup, a traditional prenup, which typically means before the marriage, there's an imbalance of power and one person has more and the other person is asked to waive rights. That's typically what happens. The divorce, it's icky, because not only are you dealing with what happened 30 years later, you're also having to go back to the past. And one example, and I want you to really hear this, I had a case where The man had premarital assets of, let's say, $10 million. They had $2 million. They had grown to about 5. In the marriage, made a lot of money, spent a lot of money. So by the time they get divorced 30 years later, there's basically $100,000 of marital money, and he's got $5 million non-marital. Well, that's only because of the prenup. And in a collaborative process, we were actually able to have conversations about what would she need. He wanted her to be taken care of. So I just point that out because often prenups, they have a purpose to begin with, but 10, 20, 30 years later, they don't make sense. I had the opposite situation where a couple had a prenup and she was supposed to get $3 million of maintenance, and they looked and it didn't make sense. So they set aside the prenup in their divorce, again, because it was not acrimonious, but she could have really taken this guy to the cleaners if she wanted it enforced. So I just offer that as a background. So what I started doing with couples who wanted prenups, we would do them collaboratively, and we would do them in a mediated fashion where each of them got to share what they were afraid of, what they were concerned about, what they wanted to protect. And at the same time, what did they want to create together? Because that's another dynamic I see in divorce. It's interesting, people walk in and say, oh, well, we always kept our accounts separate. Well, it doesn't matter that you kept your account separate. Anything you earned during the marriage is still considered marital. And so but then the opposite could be that they put everything together and then they don't have a sense of their individual finances. So a prenup mediation process, which is what I advocate, is that both people before getting married actually talk about things and write down how they want to live their lives together and what they want to kind of keep for their own on the side, if that makes sense. A post-nup, and so for advisors to understand this, and maybe you know about it, but people are relatively familiar with the prenup. You do it before. Well, a post-nup is basically, I have this wonderful little presentation, and I say, sometimes people come to the divorce lawyer and they really don't want to get divorced. They just want a new marriage. Okay. So we take them through kind of the same process. Like if one wants a divorce, okay, fine. Give us your balance sheet. We'll look at budgets. We'll look at support. And they're like, well, maybe we don't want to get divorced. And so what you can do is create a post-nuptial agreement that's kind of like a prenup that is clarifying to them what are they going to do together and what are they each going to kind of keep as their own separate non-marital or property.
Do you find that for couples that end up doing these post-nups, that it lowers the temperature if there's some friction there because they feel like, okay, I was worried about money, but at least now I'm clear on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite stories, I had a couple come in and they did not have children. They did a lot of traveling. They had a house, and he had a career where he had a pension. He was a little bit older than her, and she was still in the workforce, and she felt like they should still be saving. She didn't think they had enough. And he was like, I am tired of working. I want to live. So we did this whole process, and it's not just money. I have them talk about their goals and their fears. And, they agreed on kind of what I just described, the yours, mine, and ours. So she could continue to save money, and he could spend down his assets, and he basically was going to live off a pension. And it just totally, the temperature in their relationship went down because they were fighting about money, not about each other or what they were doing with their lives. So yeah, it totally can help.
Love this as a strategy to lower fear that people have around money, because it's so pervasive and can impact so many relationships. And this is a strategy that I don't think, well, I certainly didn't when I was an advisor. I'm not sure many advisors think about that. They would think like, oh, I don't get to divorce, or that maybe a mediator would be a better alternative for them. But this in between phase, I think is so helpful. And I also see how advisors can really step in and help with the projections and help in this process along the and support the work that you're doing with the post-nup.
Oh, I work with advisors all the time, and I've spoken at several events that, because it is a unique way to do it, and really we are preserving the portfolio. Just the bottom line, a divorce can, as you pointed out, it can cost just ridiculous amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a man come in the other day, and he was saying that a friend of his had a lot of rental property, and he was living in one and had an affair. Basically, the wife just was angry and made sure that there was nothing left when the divorce ended, because she didn't care. She was just more about getting revenge and, taking her anger out. And it's just, it's not healthy. So.
No, I was thinking about another woman who had come in to see me, and her husband was, I don't think he was mentally stable at all. Sociopath. I don't know what his actual diet, but went through every single asset, was controlling. She basically, who and had a good background, she was a lawyer, she could make money, but went through everything to be able to support her daughter, sold her mother's jewelry. I mean, it was so sad because he wouldn't settle. He just kept hanging on. And I imagine those kind of extreme cases would not be open to a collaborative process.
Probably not, but you bring up a good point that I would like to share, and that is substance abuse and addictions and, disability. Collaborative is really good for those situations because it's holistic, right? So in addition to having lawyers on the team, you've got mental health professionals, you have a financial person. And I'm just thinking of a case right now, and we have a client who has a brain tumor. And so it impacts her ability, her cognitive function, sometimes, not all the time. So we can be creative in getting, I had a woman with MS, another person. So I bring in a family member who's going to then help her process and make her decisions. And now we're thinking of possibly doing a guardianship, but the point is it's creative. It's not about winning or making someone less than or prove, alcohol, people who are addicts in court, you're taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And in collaborative, it's like, okay, we recognize that's a problem. How are we going to deal with it? Yeah.
Slightly off topic, but I can't help myself with this. It's reminding me, I know because we've, you've heard me speak on this, but this idea of scarcity thinking versus abundance thinking, and abundance is collaborative. It makes things better for everyone. And so this approach is so much more of a prosperous for everybody approach than the scarcity. For me to win, you have to lose.
Yes.
Which is actually kind of the definition of scarcity.
When you gave me introductions, the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals is our international group. There's over 5,000 members worldwide, and it was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, that's what we do. And every year they have a forum. And game theory, if you know about game theory, long and short of it is there's mathematical proof that if people are playing a game where both win, they each will do better than if they were in a game when they were trying to win or lose. So even if you win and the other loses, you're not doing as well as if you'd have worked together with your spouse to actually have you both win. And
yeah, I love that, because advisors who think of rates of return and whatever, I don't mean like their pocket. Yes, of course, it would be better for them if they keep both people as clients, if that's possible, because there'll be more money. But also, I bet people don't realize that you both end up better off if you go through this process.
Well, and what's cool is I'm most proud when my divorcing clients change their mind and they decide to stay together.
Oh.
Because, then they have a future. And that's actually why and how I developed like intentional relationship design. Because what I saw was that people would come into divorce thinking that the divorce was going to fix their problems. but they really weren't even clear about what they wanted or why they had a problem. And so in a collaborative process, we start with, what are your goals? What are your values? What's important to you? And then they get clear. And I'm sure as advisors, it's frustrating to have a client who doesn't know, right? But if they know, okay, I want to retire at 58, you can then figure that out, which actually that's a good point too. In a post-nup, for example, you can say, we as a couple intend to have children, or we want to buy a summer home, or I want to, we all agree that husband's going to retire at 60. So that then if something does break down, the conversation is clear. Yeah, we talked about this already. I had a dear woman in the other day, and she's like in her late 50s and she makes a lot of money. But the whole point was, as a couple, they said she was going to retire next week or next year. And now she's looking at, he might want a divorce. And does that mean I have to keep working? And I told her, I said, if you're in court, you might have a different set of rules than if you're able to communicate and negotiate with your spouse, because he knows you said as a family that you were going to divorce and leave this high paying, high stress job. But if the wrong litigator gets their hands on it, you might still be working. So who knows? Yeah.
Terry, tell us a little bit more about this intentional relationship design course that you like. What are some of the components in that? Like, give us a little bit of information.
Sure. So again, it started in the divorce world to help couples stay together. And then I started doing it with couples to do prenups. And the main part of the different, okay, so first of all, I'm trained in Tantra. So I teach them, communication techniques. I teach breathing techniques. As a mediator, I have these cool cards like, what are your feelings? How are you feeling? What are your needs? And the reason I say that is, while divorce and a prenup, people think of just the money parts. If you've done the foundational communication work, then when you talk about money, then you have tools for self-regulation. So the first couple sessions of a intentional relationship design is really about identifying your goals individually, your values as a couple. And then I have them kind of dream, like, what are their dreams? And then they can see like where they align and where they're not. And then we talk about fears, what they're afraid of. So that's like out on the table. And then we do talk about money, because I believe that if you don't talk about it, each person's going to have ideas and beliefs in the background. And then down the road, when things show up, oh, wait, I just assumed you thought the way I think, right? So we actually have the conversations and come up with budgets. And the idea, meaning our spending patterns as a couple need to align with our dreams, with our values. And that's why I love, and I'm going to show, so there's a little, my, what do you call it? The money map, or
a prosperity picture.
Prosperity picture back that way, right? So we have them talk about what are they interested in creating together. And then another thing we talk about is sex, because sometimes people don't want to talk about sex, or if there's a marriage that's breaking down, they may not be connecting on that level. And so I have techniques, and I did cuddle parties, and it's basically about how people can get their needs met. And then at the end, it's really about the final kind of session is to really each person make another commitment and like clarity about what they're committing to and their vows to the other person. And it's really trying to help people see that marriage is a contract that you really don't know the terms to unless and until it starts falling apart. But if they intentionally create what they want to create, then they can both live into that. And it's not quid pro quo. It's like, I really want you to go to grad school, so let's have the marriage fund you going to grad school. So that's an example.
Cool. So as an advisor, What are some ways if they see clients' relationships, it just feels like things aren't aligned or breaking down? Can you give some suggestions of ways they can broach this um, topic? Because I can imagine there's advisor to be like, I get it, but I don't really know what to say. I don't want to overstep. They're here for their investments and financial plan. They're not looking at me as a marriage counselor. Like, what are some things advisors can do?
Well, I think the first kind of, I'm going to say red flag is if one person keeps showing up and the other person is checked out. Okay, so I have a whole module about the money conscious versus the money clueless.
Mm.
And if somebody's marriage is breaking down, neither person can afford to be clueless. So as much as an advisor can openly, gently invite the clueless spouse to get educated, that will help, because a lot of times, and I don't mean to be rude, but the clueless spouse is generally afraid or they're checked out. And so that would be my first thing, is try to keep everybody educated. The next kind of easy thing is, like, let's just say you have a couple and it's a little rocky, but is really helping them create a future, asking them what they want in the future and what their dreams are, and try to help them see there is a story where they can both have what they want. One of the examples I used in this young couple, we did their values, okay? And her value was fitness and his value was adventure, okay?
Mm.
Well, it turns out they like to hike and bike. And so it was something they did together. And granted, it served both of those purposes, right? So if you have a couple, and this what happens, they're going separate, right? They had a life together. Often when the kids go off to school, now you got empty nesters, and now they're looking at retirement.
Mm.
And it's like, ooh, my idea of retirement is like traveling around the world. And her idea of retirement is, let's just sit on the porch and rock grandbabies in the rocking chair, right? So how can we find, maybe every year we have a family vacation that might pull them together, where there's a commonality between their dreams and their goals.
Beautiful. This is such an interesting conversation, and so generous for the world, right? If there's more happy couples or couples who separate more peacefully, like that's just a good thing. So Terry, if people want to find out more about you, your work, your courses, your other professional work, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, thank you. So I'm Theresa Beran Kulat when I'm playing lawyer. See how nice and official I am? And Terry Beran Kulat is where I kind of do more my fun stuff and my coaching and my speaking. And so tbkulat.com is my personal website, if you want to book me to speak or whatever. And then my law firm is called Trinity Family Law. So trinityfamilylaw.com. And the course that I have currently is called 7 Ways to Save Your Marriage. And it's on Teachable. But the funny thing is, I wrote the ebook like in 2009, because that's how long I've been trying to tell people, like, don't get divorced, like, change your marriage, create what you want. And I think that's really what I'm about, is helping people create the futures that they want.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for sharing that with us today. I'm really grateful to have had you here and to know you, Terry. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to all of you listening and watching. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin. You can find out more about me at ellenrogin.com. That's ELLENROGIN.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, What Extraordinary Advisors Know That Others Don't. And so until next time, the question to ponder is, how can you create an even closer, more peaceful relationship with your partner or with your clients? And remember, be great and create great every single